Now, our last group of plants are our angiosperms. These are our flowering plants, and it's the largest, most successful group of plants. There's about 240,000 known species. The ovules are always enclosed within diploid tissues, and as I said, it's the largest group, the dominant group. We divide these into two classes. The monocotyledons or monocots have one cotyledon in a seed, and the cotyledons are the seed leaves that contain the nutrients to nourish the developing embryo. And the eudicots have two cotyledons in the seed. They used to be called dicots. Now if we look at the flower, because they are flowering plants, they have a peduncle that is the stalk, and it expands at the tip into what's called a receptacle. And this is where you have your sepals, petals, stamens, carpels, and they are all attached to the receptacle. The calyx is the collection of sepals that protect the flower bud before it opens. And the corolla is all of the petals inside the bud. Now, each stamen, which is the male part, has an anther and a filament. The filament is the stalk. The female part is the carpel. It has three regions: the ovary, which is swollen at the base, and it's got the ovules in it that develop into seeds, and the ovule becomes the fruit. There's the style, which is the stalk that elevates the stigma, which is sticky on the tip so that pollen grains will stick to it. This is showing a lot of the diversity of plants. There's lots of different types of plants. This is the generalized structure of the flower. We'll talk about it more later, but you can see here's the anther that produces the pollen, and the stalk or the filament, and that's the stamen. And then here's the carpel that is here in the plant, and you see the sticky stigma and the style, which is the tube that supports the stigma, and then down here at the bottom is the ovary where the ovules are. Now, in your textbook on 110, we look at the life cycle of the flowering plant. You've got the stamen. You see all the anthers and the filaments here around that carpel that's in the center. The stamen produces the pollen, and then the carpel has the ovary where the ovules are. And the pollen has these little pollen sacs, and this is the microsporangia, and they produce the microspores. The ovules are the megasporangium, and they produce the megaspores. And the microspores go through mitosis, and they become the immature pollen grains. And the megaspores go through mitosis, and they produce, three of them will degenerate, because you see there's four of them. Three of them will degenerate, and only one becomes the female gametophyte. And so you've got the pollen grain that lands on the stigma, and you have this pollen tube that grows down, and it eventually will fertilize. And you have something called double fertilization happen, where the pollen tube will discharge the sperm, and one migrates and fertilizes the egg, and that becomes the zygote. The other one will fertilize two polar nuclei, so it becomes a triploid 3N endosperm that is used to nourish the developing embryo inside the seed coat of the seed. And here you see what the fruit develops around it, which is the mature ovary. Now, there's a lot of diversity in plants, in flowering plants. The wind-pollinated flowers are not always very showy because they don't have to attract anything. Bird-pollinated and insect-pollinated flowers are going to be very colorful to attract the birds and insects. If they bloom at night, they have to attract the nocturnal mammals and insects. So color's not that important, but they do need to be aromatic and have a scent, and it's not always a pleasant scent. Um, the fruits protect the seeds and help with seed dispersal because you're going to have wind, gravity, water, and animals used for dispersal here. How do we use plants? Well, they are the producers in most ecosystems. We use them for food. Wheat, corn, and rice are our main food that we use from flowering plants. Sugar comes from sugar cane and sugar beets. And a lot of the things we drink, coffee, tea, and colas, come from our flowering plants. So they are very important to us. Here you can see the wheat and the corn and the rice plants that produce our cereals, grains, and we use them from anything from basket weaving to making rubber for tires to making our clothes from cotton or just for decoration.